There we go. Christy, how are you? Welcome.
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
Hi, Christy. I was just texting you.
Was I making you nervous?
Yes. So
Sorry.
ignore my test because Dianne is running that summer whatever thing she does every year at Yale.
Okay.
When we get the big names, we got to make sure that they're all dialed in and they're all ready for the Zoom. But I appreciate you coming on. This is going to be cool. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Honestly, I'm a much better communicator, Colleen. So I apologize. I've just been out of the country and had this down. So I was good. I was getting all the emails. I just wasn't sending a lot out.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Did you go on vacation out of the country, you said?
I did. We just went down to Cabo for a week.
Oh, okay. Okay. Did you have fun?
Had a great time. We were planning to go to the Caymans, and then some storm was coming through, and we knew it'd be raining the whole time. So quick pivot.
When did you get back?
Last night.
Oh my God. Well, double thank you. In fact, I was just telling them that Fred Williams said to be sure and say hi to you, Christy, because
tell him I said hi.
he's normally on with us, but he has a game tonight. You know, he's now the head coach of the Sparks interim.
Oh, I know.
So we accepted his excuse.
I don't even know if that's an excuse. That's a better use of time, in my opinion.
So you have any other basketball related things this summer, Christy?
Not right now. I go over to KYAL. That's something I've gotten more involved in, obviously with my situation. So I'll do that. Talking with them about doing some things, podcasts and whatnot with them. But really, as of right now, the only thing I have are just getting ready for media days come the fall.
How many do you go to? How many conferences?
Last year I did, American was still remote, but then I was at Big 12, ACC, SEC.
Oh, wow. Now remind me, when is Big 12, when is Texas and OU going to the SEC? It's not next year, is it the following year?
No, I think it's right now 2 more years, maybe.
Okay. So
because,
it's not next year though.
No, because correct me if I'm wrong, all those American schools are not coming in until the year after next. They'll have all of them for a year before they move.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think that's right. Or maybe they're coming in this year. I can't remember.
I thought I saw.
Actually, they may be coming in this year because of BYU. I remember BYU last year was there last year in the WCC.
Right. So it's BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we're just waiting. People are usually a late arriving crowd. So I'm the warm-up act, so to give people time to.
We're fine. We're fine. I may fall asleep on you, but otherwise we're good.
Yeah. Hey, listen, this is the sign, Christy. That's board stiff. Okay, just straight arm, board stiff. Okay.
How was Cabo? Did you have a great time down there?
I did. There's a resort there that we just go to that honestly, it's just the people have been so good to us. And it's honestly, my wife finishes with her softball stuff and it's just veg out time. So we'll do something a little bit more culturally enhancing, hopefully latter part of the summer.
Nice.
Is she a softball coach?
No, so she works for ESPN as well. She's a vice president. She's over all the NCAA championships except for basketball and football.
Oh, wow.
But softball is her sport. So as I call her the czar of softball.
Man, that was a great World Series.
And so hence you're tweeting out about the softball, right? You weren't doing any softball games.
No.
Gotcha.
She says it's nepotism. She can't hire me. I think she's just no, I'm kidding. No, but I'm honestly a huge I'm just a sports fan. Growing up in the South, in Alabama, you didn't have a professional team there unless you count the USFL. So it was always college sports. And I'm still that way. I love college sports. I go from football season, obviously, to basketball, and then I jump into softball.
Nice.
You do some football games?
No, I'm just a fan. Fan.
So you're able to maybe get to a football early season, like early September game?
Yeah. So that's been one of the things, like since I've been out of coaching, I've always had this bucket list of games I wanted to go to. Like went to LSU and went to, Death Valley for that. Want to go to the Grove at Ole Miss. I did the Rose Bowl a couple years ago. Want to do the Army Navy game. I mean, there's just so many different football games. I want to go to Camp Randall. Just random things that as a football geek, you just see them. Want to get up to Washington, and see a game there. Same thing with Oregon. So.
Yeah.
How about the 49er game?
So again, I'm just not a big pro person just because I didn't have it growing up. Like even here, Charlotte, the Charlotte Stadium is literally a mile and a half from my house. And I just can't get into, I mean, maybe if we get a decent quarterback, it would help.
Yeah. Hey, Matthew, can you text Dianne the link? Because she just texted, where's the link? It's at the bottom.
Yep.
I'm texting her this.
Yep, no problem. Let's see here.
She is a glutton for punishment, Christy. She works the Yale summer, I forgot what it's called, the summer whatever, for 6 weeks. Camp.
That's when I knew I was getting old too. Like the joy of camp was starting to diminish a little bit.
I hated camp. I got to where I used to camp all summer. But then it's like, you get tired of all the kids running around the dorms, the counselors who don't do their jobs. And anyway.
Towards the end, it was babysitting versus kids who really wanted to get better. That's what I struggled with.
You're just a high-priced babysitter. They pay all that entry fee. There she is. Hey,
did she make it on? I was just about to text her.
I got it.
Hey.
Hey, Dianne.
Hi, sorry, I'm directing a program, and one of the kids, I had to go handle a problem.
So are you at Yale?
How many weeks?
6.
Oh my God, Di. You're my hero. You're my hero.
We have 73 students overnight, international as well. First, Colleen, how's your mom?
She's about the same. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. She's
prayers, honey.
Yeah, thank you. So hey, guys, my mom had an accident at our facility, so she fractured her C4 vertebrae, so it's very severe. She's not doing very well. So in case I need to answer a phone, just so you'll know, they're supposed to call me, okay? So Dianne and Matthew knows, but just so you'll know in case I disappear.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Yeah, but okay, so Dianne and Christy, so here's what we're gonna do. Matthew starts to Zoom off because Christy hasn't been on. So Matthew starts the Zoom off. He gives a little, tidbits, and then he introduces me. And like I said, I'm the warm-up comedian. Okay, so I come on and give little snack tips, music tips, and then I say something about historical, either basketball or athletically. And then Matthew will segue into you, and you guys will have copies of the questions. So we're going to do in like snake order. So we'll start off with the coaching questions. So Matthew will ask Dianne the question first, and then if you guys could just piggyback on each other so we don't have to read the question twice. Okay, so question 1.
Yep.
Dianne goes first, Christy will follow, and then Matthew will also ask question 2, but then he starts with Christy, and then Di, you follow Christy, and then I'll ask question 3, starting with Di. Okay, so is that easy enough?
We got it.
Okay. And usually people that have questions wait till the end, but whatever floats their boat. Okay, and don't if you want to be as brief as possible or as lengthy as possible no, I'm just kidding. We're trying to keep the whole thing for both of you about 1 hour and 20. Okay, we don't want to keep you because we really appreciate your time. And anything else I forgot? Oh, we are recording. Is that okay with each of you?
Yes.
Christy, okay. And Dianne, okay, I had already told Christy, but Fred Williams sends his regrets. He wishes he could be on, but he's coaching and the Sparks have a game tonight.
How's he doing?
Well, he said it came about like in a couple hours and his head was spinning, and I called him right away and he was in the air, and he said he'd call me back in about 5 hours. He was trying to call each player individually. because his first practice was the next morning. So I texted him after practice and he goes, oh, a lot of high energy and blah, 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 this. But you know, if you realistically, and Justin, you've seen them, but if you look at their roster, they have an aging roster. They're a lot like the Lakers, I think. I mean, they need some spring legs. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's a good analysis.
I noticed the other night they even started Christy Tolliver, you know, who was late joining them from the Mavs. And so,
Yeah, she's on my fantasy team. How did she do? I haven't even been able to check the box score. Did she get a lot of minutes or no?
I think, well, she started and I think she did, but I don't know about her plus and minuses. Are you in first place?
I was last I checked. I got busy and I didn't know. I don't even know what happened this past week. I set my lineup and I was 4-1 last I saw. My only loss is to Colleen in this fantasy league.
So Kyle, where are you?
We have a growth mindset fantasy league. And
Oh my
so-
God, I love it.
Yeah, so we all did our draft and, you know, it's a little complicated for me because you know, even if you might want to play 3 guards, you can't. It depends on what position they're, you know,
Yeah. No.
talk about. Yeah. So,
Well, next year you have to open it up. Come on now.
oh,
We
well,
wanna get in on the fun.
he sent out a big email to all the growth mindset participants.
Oh,
and-
I didn't see it.
Okay.
Well, next year I'll get you a
Next year
personal
we'll expand it, 'cause
invite,
we don't-
Diane.
Yeah. And like, you
Personal
know,
invite.
you could have one person on IR. I have Brittany Griner, so I'm hoping she gets released, but you never know.
Yeah. Oh, that poor child.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I see we have Kent Kitata, the volleyball friend of mine. Hi, Kent. Thank you for joining.
Hi.
And Ebony,
Yeah,
the great
thank you for
Ebony
letting me
Halliburton.
join.
Anytime. You're now on my mailing list all the time, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate it.
And then Lauren, Coach, is it Coach Coco, Lauren? Lauren?
Coach Coco, yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay. You were on our last one. Thank you again for joining. Weren't you on the
I
Natalie
appreciate-
Nakasi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And are you the one that's a high school coach in, was it Texas?
No, I was a college coach at Lane College this past year, and actually now I just switched over to strength and conditioning.
Okay. Well, welcome again and thank you for joining. You're always welcome. We're gonna get started in just a few minutes here.
Just give it
Ebony,
another minute or so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Guys, there's a fire drill. I'll be right back.
Oh my gosh. Ebony Halliburton, unmask yourself. Where'd she go?
Unmute.
She might be
Ebony,
driving
you're on
or
mute.
something.
You're on mute, Ebony.
I'm not talking, coach.
Oh,
I'm on another Zoom with the for basketball, so I got them on mute too, but it's about to end. So then I'm gonna come on like in 2 minutes.
okay. And Karen Tesmer, thanks for joining. Are you driving or did you fly back into Boston?
I'm waiting at Boston Airport for a bus, so I'm listening.
Okay. Now this is a
It's
true
just at an
thumper.
NCA meeting. Yeah. Good to see Diane and Christy.
Yeah, Diane has a fire drill. And Coach Pruitt, where have you been? We had the MIA. We had you on some milk cartons. Jason, where you been? I know you're there. He's probably still out recruiting. You know, he has 24 people on his team.
Visiting college kids.
Oh, wow.
Dad, why are you talking to these people? I'm trying to get on the Zoom.
All right. Hey, Dario. Thanks for joining, man. I'm going to go ahead and
What's
get this started. I'm going to introduce Colleen and she can take it away with her snacks and music and history. She's my co-host with over 4 decades in the game, an assistant for 2 national championship teams, a dynamic assistant coach and successful head coach, leading UC Irvine to their only NCAA tournament appearance in 1995. She coached USA basketball, professional basketball with the Sparks, and worked in administration at UCLA as assistant athletic director. She served as the Secretariat for Competition for Women's Basketball for the 1984 Olympics. And my favorite accomplishment, the Technical Advisor and Consultant for the classic film Love and Basketball. Please welcome my resident legend and snack and music expert, Colleen Matsuhara.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Thank you. And he made up that own adjective. Believe me, I never think of myself as a legend. So anyway, but I'd like to welcome everybody and really appreciate Christy and Dianne being our speakers for tonight. I'm really excited, looking forward to it. And hence our title of today's Zoom is From the Whistle to the Mic. You know, they both were head coaches, longtime coaches, veteran coaches, and now they have the mic in front of them and, you know, they are broadcasters and they're here to tell us about their journey. But first, I always like to start off telling everyone here, first of all, happy belated Father's Day to all of you fathers on the Zoom. Hope you had a glorious day with your family and kids and everybody. Also, today is a first day of summer, the summer solstice, and the growth mindset. The reason why Matthew named it that is because growth mindset is having the belief that intelligence can be developed, as if your brain is like a muscle that can be trained. If you have a growth mindset, it means that you believe that your intelligence, your creative abilities and character can be improved in meaningful ways. And this leads to a desire to improve by embracing challenges where we learn and get better at what we do. In a growth mindset, people believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are merely the starting point. With this in mind, a love of learning and resilience is created. Those of you who use growth mindset worry less about looking smart and put more energy into learning as you all tend to achieve more. On the other hand, if you have a fixed mindset, is where you believe your basic qualities, such as your intelligence or talents, are simply fixed traits. Your time is spent documenting your intelligence or your talent instead of developing them. Fixed mindsetters believe their intelligence or talent are simply, quote, fixed traits. So they also mistakenly believe that talent alone without effort creates success. And we know that is not correct. Most of us use a little of both fixed mindset and growth mindset. That being in mind, we're hoping that everyone has a growth mindset when they listen to our talks here. So to start off with, I want to start off with my snack tips. And today's snacks, my first snack is called Li Hing Sour Pineapple Rings. And these are really sour, let me tell you. There's 18 grams of sugar in 2 pieces. My nephew works in Hawaii and he sent me a package of these and I opened it one night thinking I'm gonna just pop 2 or 3. I ate the whole bag, it was terrible. So I only poured out 3 for this evening. And also just a side note, it also comes in jumbo sour watermelon, but I dare not open this to show you because if it's open, I will put my fingers in and eat it, okay? My second snack is Old Reliable, and I don't know, but I love Cheez-Its. They're baked snack crackers, but this Cheez-Its here, the flavor is cheddar jack, and you could really taste the cheese on these. They look like the regular Cheez-Its, but if you get the one that tastes like cheddar, you know, you could taste it. So I, once again, opened it the other night, watching the Warriors win. Yes, Warriors. And before I knew it, it's only a third of a bag left. So that's my 2 snack tips, okay? I did not have anything from Trader Joe's today because I want to keep you thrown off the rhythm, okay? Then my next thing is my music. And let me get my music going here. Oops, wrong one. Sorry. Okay, so my first song, I play 2 songs. And by the way, if you get the link afterwards, Matthew always edits out the song because it is copyrighted material. Okay, my first song is Girl on Fire with Alicia Keys. I think it's very appropriate because, you know, Title IX is about to turn 50 years old. So let me just play a little snippet here. Okay, so all of us in women's sports know girls are on fire right now. So that was in tribute to that. My second song is called Freedom by John Baptiste. And John Baptiste in 2000, this year won the Grammy for Album of the Year. That's called We Are. This is a song from that album, and it's an anthem for Black Power and freedom. And his video of this got Best Music Video, also another Grammy. And as you know, Sunday was Juneteenth, which commemorates the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. So let me just play a little of this. Okay, that's my two music selections for today, Freedom and Girl on Fire. And you know, our two speakers are going to be Girls on Fire. Then lastly, as my warm-up shtick here, I always talk a little bit about the history. And today I wanted to just remind everyone that this Thursday, June 23rd, is the 50th anniversary of the passage of Title IX of the Civil Rights Act, which was signed by President Nixon. And as you know, it prohibits federally funded educational institutions from discriminating against students or employees based on sex. And it was basically written in response to huge educational inequalities that women faced prior to the 1970s. I thought it was interesting that the major author and sponsor of this legislation to Congress was Representative Patsy Mink from Hawaii. She was denied admission to med school on the basis of her sex. Other co-authors were Representative Edith Green, who was advised not to pursue electrical engineering. A third person was Representative Shirley Chisholm. She was told that politics was for men. And attorney Pauli Murray was denied admission to Harvard. So all of those, they were discriminated against based on sex. And as the timeline goes on, I know many of you may not, well, many of you youngsters may not remember, but in 1973, tennis superstar Billie Jean King played a exhibition tennis match against a self-proclaimed male chauvinist named Bobby Riggs. She beat him in 2-1. And her quote was, she was so afraid that it would set women's sports back 50 years had she not won that match. And it was tuned in by millions of people on national television. And by doing that, the NCAA contributes to gender inequality and significantly undervalues women's basketball. So we all got to rise up about that. In October, another finding was that the overall conclusion was that the NCAA has neglected women's sports. So they need to be shaken and woken up more. So girls' participation in high school since Title IX has increased 1,000% from 300,000 to now over 3 million. So we must continue to advocate for, promote, and help girls and women sports.
Why don't you call?
Now, also, lastly, I'm gonna go into this next time, but for those of you who are able to, and you can watch the ESPN documentary, it's called Dream On. It just aired last week. It's a 3-part series about the 1996 women's Olympic team. It's fascinating. And I was telling Matthew about how they go in depth with the young ladies on the team and their team dynamic, about how Tara, the coach, related to them or, conflicted with them. And towards the end, they start to delve into the personal lives of some of the players, like people didn't know. And I won't say anymore because I don't want to be a spoiler. But maybe by the next time we have our next Zoom, you can have watched it because it's really touching. I've watched it twice now. Okay, Matthew.
Thank you, Colleen. I have to apologize. I got bumped off for a second there. My power went out. So I had to jump on a hotspot, and we're gonna make it work. Sorry about that. But Colleen, thank you again. Always doing great, bringing the history to life, and those 18 grams of sugar pineapple rings, man. I don't know how you do it. You stay so fit. Look at that.
I probably won't sleep tonight. I'll be on a sugar high.
But it gives me great pleasure now to welcome our two speakers. And normally I give this big PA announcer type intro, but I'm going to let our wonderful speakers with their broadcast voices introduce themselves and tell us all about themselves. So I'd like to welcome our two wonderful speakers, Dianne Nolan, a growth mindset from way back member, and Christy Thomaskutty. Thank you so much for both for being here. And why don't we start with Dianne? Why don't you just tell us about yourself in like a short bio? Whoop, you're on mute, Dianne. Sorry. Hold on.
I'm sorry. I
There
didn't
you
want you
go.
to hear the fire. I didn't want you to hear the fire drill. I apologize. I'm right now living at Yale. Excuse me. I've got to take this phone call. Chris.
You want to jump in, Matthew?
Why don't we, yeah,
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Christy? Yep.
let's make a substitution for now.
Yep.
I could never substitute for Dianne, but I will tag out for a moment. My name's Christy Thomaskutty, former collegiate player at Tulane, where I got to play for Candy Harvey. And that's where I first met Colleen. And then Lisa Stockton. And then out of college, I thought I was taking a gap year to go to law school and was just doing some consulting work. And a job at SLU came open. And I knew that I wasn't happy in the private sector. And so I was an assistant coach at SLU for 1 year under Jill Pizzotti, and then had the great fortune to go to Illinois State and work for Jill Hutchison. Unfortunately, she decided to retire for that first year. And then I stayed there for 4 more years before going to Emory. In full disclosure, at the end of my tenure at Illinois State, I had started applying to PhD programs because I wanted to teach in the college level. And I just had come a little disenfranchised with a lack of emphasis on education, as both my parents are educators. And then Emory opened up, and a friend of mine said, take a look at it. I knew nothing about a Division III school in Atlanta, but I went there, fell in love with it. And then 14 years later was still coaching there. And full disclosure, I probably would still be there, except I was diagnosed with cancer. And we caught it early. It was a great thing, but I just realized I didn't have it at that time to keep coaching. And that's kind of how I fell into the ESPN world. And what I will say is that I've learned a lot through cancer, and it's not a woe is me thing. It is a blessing. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it changed how I really viewed life, our game, and everything. And I truly believe I am blessed to do what I do now, because everyone's like, do you miss the game? I miss the preseason. I'm not gonna lie to you. I love teaching the game. But as I always say, I sleep now after games. My heart goes out to all coaches now. I really think that we have put you in a position to really struggle, because I see so many times, at least in the games I'm covering, a lack of support. And I think this is why I love groups like this, because I think we need to support one another in any and all facets, men, women, all races, because it is hard what you do as a coach.
Thank you,
You're still
Christy.
and
There we go, Dianne. Hold on. I think you're still muted.
I apologize.
It's perfect timing. It's perfect timing, Dianne.
Okay. All right. I as I mentioned, I was a Title IX baby. Came out of grad school and was teaching at St. Francis College in Brooklyn. It was the time that you could be an assistant professor at a college, be the head women's basketball coach, and work on your PhD. So I was doing that. And then Title IX came in, full-time coaching positions opened. While I was at St. Francis, we always played against Fairfield University. And when we visited there, I fell in love with it. And I said, if that job ever opened, I'm going to go after it. And I did, with great guns. And I was fortunate enough to get it. And I remember the president of St. Francis College saying to me, why do you want to give up teaching and go into coaching? You know, I said, that's what I want to do. So I stayed at Fairfield for 28 years, lucky enough to get to the NCAA tournament 4 times at the first at-large bid in the MAC conference. So it was pretty exciting times. And then we had a new president come in, and they decided it was time for me to retire. But that wasn't my decision. So from there, I spent 3 years as the associate head coach at Yale with Chris Goldbrecht, who Colleen also worked with at one point. And then from there, I became the head coach at Lafayette. So I had about close to 40 years in college coaching. And then from there, I stopped coaching, started teaching. I actually teach in an inner city high school. And a former player of mine, Trish Fabry, who was Trish Sackett when she played for me, said, Coach, why don't you come up here and be our radio announcer? So I was part of the radio broadcast for women's basketball at Quinnipiac. And then when the MAC decided to join ESPN3 and air the men and the women's games, they asked me to do both. So now I commentate on men and women for Quinnipiac, do the MAC conference games, and did some work with the ASUN and MAC Challenge. So it's kind of a different way to get involved into the broadcasting field, but that's what you do.
Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you, Dianne. And in case you don't know, guys, you can go and look her up on the total wins list. Dianne is way up there, and man, we're just so thankful to have you today. Now we're gonna, since we flipped it last time, we're gonna keep it flipped. We'll start with Dianne on the next question, and then go on to Christy. And this is sticking with coaching. What were the first 3 things you did as the head coach?
Found my office. No, nobody was there to greet me. It wasn't that I wasn't open to welcome arms. Believe me, when I walked into my first job at Fairfield, someone gave me a key, a steel gray desk, and said, "You're only here because of a law, and don't forget it." So that was my greeting, my full-time coaching position. So one of the first things I did was a true story. First thing I tried to do is change the attitude of the program. So it was going from Division 3 to 2 to 1. So changing the culture, everyone talks about that, but how do you do that? And we just really tried to emphasize that we were going to work to get everything. We weren't going to just be satisfied or want it just to be given to us because it's a law. We wanted to show people and show ourselves that we were going to work for it. So it was that. So, and it was also, second thing was making sure that everyone knew their responsibilities and knew the expectations, because the expectations changed overnight. So what was what they needed to do, they had to change their lifestyle, they had to change their commitment in order to win. So the third thing was really trying to sell that winning philosophy, that the more you put into it, the better you're going to be, the more games you're going to win, and that's going to really open up a lot of doors for you. So they were the first three things I did.
Thank you. Christy?
I think like everyone, I met with players because similar to Dianne, I wanted to know who I was and what my beliefs were and how I wanted to run a program, but I also wanted to know who they were. Probably, and again, at Division 3, school year ends, they go home. And I was hired in late April, so I was only had players on campus 2 weeks before they left. And then I started meeting with what I call the impact players. Those are the people around campus that I knew would have a direct impact on my players. Because I think there's just so many resources on campuses now, or there should be, that you as a coach cannot know in terms of how to help and support your athletes. I always knew if my players came to me with a problem or I heard about something, I knew who to call. I didn't have the answers, but I knew who did. And so that was probably one of the most beneficial things I did. And my closest colleague was our tennis coach, who had been there for years because she understood the culture. And I think that and so that was a godsend for me to have her. And then obviously I hit the road recruiting because we needed players.
Thank you, Christy. Christy, but when you met the impact players, that was at Emory.
That was at Emory, yes. And that was, I mean, it was a big transition for me because I'd only been at the Division I level.
Okay.
And so in understanding that culture of a Division III, much less a really selective academic school like Emory, I couldn't just impose my way. I had to be a part of the greater team.
Right. Okay, so Christy, looking back, what are key components or attributes that you feel a head coach should possess?
I think you've got to be a great communicator, being able to manage up, communicate your administration, being able to communicate within your staff/team, and then obviously being able to communicate and understand and listen to your players. I think that's huge. And I also believe you have to believe in yourself. There's got to be a security. Doing what I do now, I can tell when coaches don't feel secure in their job, whether that's because of administration or how their team is performing, and it affects everything you do. And I wish I really would have understood this better when I was coaching. And then I think you're only going to be as good as the people around you. You've got to be able to select quality people that not only will support you, but balance you. The attributes that you are weak at, that they are strong at, because it takes a village. It definitely takes a quality team to support your players.
And agreeing with, Christy, you've got to make sure that you can explain your vision and that you can get buy-in from your players. And I think you need to be able to show them where you want to take them and how you're going to do it and what's going to be the result from it. I also think you need to be consistent, because I think a lot of the athletes, well, you let her get away with this, and you do have to treat everybody fairly. And we all know that often it's not equal, but I think players really tune into that. And I think until you have set the groundwork where I really don't have favorites, it's in the best interests of the team. But when players feel that they're not being treated consistently, like everybody else in the same way, I think that really is a detriment to the team's progress. So you've got to get that communicated. And also you've got to know those players. The more you can understand what buttons to push for what players, and they understand there's a reason for everything. And I think that's the big why question. Why did you do that? Why do we have to have this? Why do you want us to do this way? And if you can explain that to them and they can buy into it and understand it, I think you're going to be more successful.
Really good points. And staying there with Dianne, now you have coached at a few different spots. And so when hiring your assistant coaches and staff, the question is, what attributes did the very best members of your staff share? But I also want to ask, did your process get better in your coaching career as the further you went?
Yes. This answer to that question is absolutely yes. And first of all, I think I always tried to get assistants that shared the same vision, but were able to do things that I couldn't. Like they would really be able to balance out the team, where I can do a great job on an on-campus recruiting. I'm not that good on the phone. And I know that of myself. So I knew in recruiting, it's so important to communicate. And at that time, phone conversations were so important. So I wanted a good communicator that could communicate on the phone. I'm a guard coach. I'm a point guard. I was a guard all my life. So I would look for position. We had blessed with a lot of good post players, and I wanted to make sure that they were getting the best coaching that they could get. And so I would recruit for what positions that we needed. And then I wanted somebody who was competitive. I think that's an element that we don't really key in on a lot. And when I look back, my best assistants were assistants who had a competitive drive as a player or as a whatever profession they were in, or whatever major they were in during their collegiate years, and they brought that competitiveness to the program.
Christy?
Christy?
Yeah, I wanted people who were going to be great representatives, not just of me, but of our institution. And so I have to tell this story. Again, Division III, you're gonna have a lot of turnover. And so a lot of, I'd probably say in 14 years, I was looking for an assistant at least 3 times at the Final Four. And each one of those times, there were people who had been recommended to me by peers that I saw how they behaved at the Final Four that I marked off. And so to any young coaches out there, always know people are watching you. How do you recruit during the summer? How do you interact with your colleagues? How do you interact with young people? How are you acting when you don't think anyone's watching? And yes, the Final Four matters in terms of that behavior. At least it did to me. And humility was a big thing for me, because if you're hiring young people, you know, I said all the time, and I was that person. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so you have to understand that there's so much more to learn and grow throughout, not just as a coach, but as a young person. And so you got to be humble enough to embrace that, because otherwise all the work ethic doesn't matter if you're not going about growing as an individual. And that work ethic, just ability to go out and get things done without me having to see it. Because again, small staff as a head coach at Division III, there was usually only 2 of us in the office. And so if I had to make a to-do list, we weren't going to get things done. And so just the go get it, entrepreneurial spirit, I thought was key. And similar to Dianne's, I wanted attributes that I didn't have. I was the point guard as well. So I was always looking for a post coach, but I was also looking for different personalities and different backgrounds. Because if a player didn't respond to me because maybe I didn't understand them, I needed that other person on staff to understand them. So I was looking for different backgrounds as well when I was making my hires.
Great. So Christy, who do you consider to be your mentor and why?
I'll probably get emotional with this. Jill Hutchison, coach at Illinois State, and tremendous person, first and foremost. And I got to give a little background. I'd only been coaching 1 year when Jill Hutchison had a position open at her school. And when I talk about mentors, I have to bring up that my assistant coach at Tulane had been Katie Meyer. And I'm sitting in my office at SLU. It's like 23 years old. And the phone rings, because there were no cell phones for all you young people. The desk phone rings. And Katie says, literally is on the phone with me 10 seconds. Someone's about to call you. Don't ask questions. Just listen and agree to meet with her. And she hangs up on me. Like it was like a CIA kind of conversation. Like I was like, what just happened? And so Jill Hutchison calls and says, I've been talking to some people. You've come highly recommended. I'd like to bring you on campus for an interview. Or no, I'd like to meet you at the Final Four and discuss the job I have open. And so being true to my former coach, I said, okay. Knowing, and I go in and I tell my head coach, Joe Zadi at the time, this just happened. I'm going to listen, but I don't plan on leaving because I'd only been a coach for 1 year. I meet with her at the Final Four, and then she flies down to see me in St. Louis. And then 4 different times she offers me the job. And I say no, because I think I'm being upstanding young person by being loyal. I'd only been there 1 year. Finally, I agreed to go on an interview there. And it was the people. It was the connection. And you guys have all done this long enough. You know the winners in life because of how everyone else looks at them and engages with them and responds to them. And that was the impact and why Jill Hutchison is still my mentor, because she coached me holistically, not just to get out of me what I could do on the court. And she was always like, if you're not happy personally, you're not going to be happy professionally. And don't get me wrong, this woman had a wealth of knowledge. Most of the rules that we still play by was Jill Hutchison writing them and putting them in. But when I say I'm lucky and I'm blessed, I know for a fact if Katie Meyer hadn't called me and had that 10-second very cryptic voicemail or call with me, I probably would have never be where I am today. Because I honestly know that I am doing what I'm doing now because of Jill. And the biggest thing she imparted on me was give to the game. And I do know I'm at ESPN now because I gave to the game through the WBCA, through other things. I am here because, and the one thing I'll say is that the more I gave, the more I received, whether I wanted it or not, because our game is about the people. Our game is about helping one another and growing on and off the floor. And that's what Jill Hutchison imparted on me at a very young age. And I'm very blessed that that was the lesson that I took, because unknowingly I am here today because I was raised to give to the WBCA and give to the game of women's basketball.
Well, Jill is definitely a fabulous person for our game, and we're still giving. And Dianne, how about you? Who do you consider your mentor to be?
Well, I had a very strange or different kind of upbringing. My mother was a high school basketball coach, and my mother was actually in the Hall of Fame, where she coached basketball and had the most wins of a high school coach. And we're talking back, in the 50s and 60s. And so she was really my mentor. She coached all the McGlades, Bernie McGlade, Agnes McGlade, you name it, Lisa Sermoniano. If any of these names are out there, my mother was their high school coach. So I saw from a very early age what my mother did with her players, how my mother was able to win. Think of the New Jersey State Championship. The first time they offered a state championship for girls in the state of New Jersey, there were no divisions. It was every high school, and my mother won it 3 times in a row of every school. Biggest thing was her senior year. She didn't win the state championship. My mother's team beat Kara Blazowski's team. The Blaze, I never let her forget that. But so my mother was my mentor, and she really knew the game, but she knew her players, and she really cared about her players. She would get angry. My brother would come in to help and say, "Don't you hurt my girls." And you were Bert's girls. And so I got the love of, if you love your players and you find ways to love them always and be there for them, that they will become better people. And then when they're happier and better people, they'll play better. So my mother was certainly one of my mentors. The other one was, my brother played basketball at Temple. He was an All-American. And when I decided to coach, he said, "You want to learn how to coach, you better get up to the Poconos, and you better work Pocono Invitational Camp, and you better go up and meet Kathy Rush." So every summer I would work the Pocono camp. We have this legendary camp, Cabin 17, Teresa Grench, myself, Mimi Griffin, Rainey Portland. We all were bunked together in a little cabin up in the Poconos, had to do stations, had to do all those kinds of things. Seth Greenberg and his brother were the referees. I threw a water jug at Seth because he made a bad call and cost me a camp championship. So I mean, we would sit around in those cabins, and if you ask some of the older coaches about Cabin 17 and really share ideas, we weren't competitive with each other. We were all there trying to learn the game, trying to put our footprint on it and survive. So the Kathy Rush camp, the Pocono Invitational, they were really our mentors. And then watching how Kathy Rush was able to win those championships and Lucille Cavalis. So that was the era that I looked up to, and they really helped me out in my coaching career.
Wow, those are 2 of the best mentorship stories I've ever heard. Those are phenomenal. Thank you. That was amazing. Staying with Dianne, with respect to coaching, what would you advise your younger self?
My younger self, I would advise to be a little more confident and it's a little more competitive. I really wanted to make sure everyone was happy. We're having a good time. They were really able to enjoy the sport. And I don't think I was demanding enough. And I think I shortchanged them a little bit by being that way. And I don't think they succeeded as much as maybe they could have if I had put a few more demands and been a little more competitive in my teaching.
Interesting.
I'm going to be probably the opposite, because I honestly think I need to do less of the X's and O's and invest more in them off the floor, because I was so competitive that I thought the harder I worked in developing them on the floor, the better they would be. And I look back now, and it should have been so much more about developing them off the floor. And then I'll say this, I think balance. I think it was, one day at Christmas that I would take, or, 1 week during the summer, and that was it, because I thought I always had to be working, or someone was outworking me and someone's program was going to be better. And so I just think family, you only get one family. And I'll say invest in your own family as much as you're going to invest in your team.
Good points. Excellent. Okay, now we're going to switch over to the media questions in regards to your media position. So, Christy, what sequence of events led you to enter the broadcasting field? I know you sort of alluded to that, but.
Yeah, so I got diagnosed with cancer. Honestly, tomorrow will be my 5-year post-surgery anniversary. And so I get through surgery, and I was a fool. Again, this was that work ethic. I was out recruited at the beginning of July because, again, I felt okay and was tired. And my treatment wasn't until September. And I had a radiation treatment. And I just, every morning I kept thinking I would feel okay the next one. And it got to October, and I knew I didn't have it. And so I made the decision to step away, not knowing what I was going to do. And at that time, and this is why I say I'm lucky on so many levels, that was the same year that Steph White had started at Vandy. And so she and Carolyn Peck left the broadcasting world. And the person that was over women's basketball reached out and said, we don't have coaches. And I went through this whole interview process, did a mini game kind of thing, and it went up to some of the VPs to make sure that I could do it. Because again, for me, I was thinking, well, I don't see any other Division III coaches on air, but it was the WBCA piece as being a vice president at that time that they were sold on it. And then I did okay. And so, I started off as the minimal contract. I had 15 games a year that first year, and they always go over at ESPN. But they want to make you prove yourself of how you're going to be. And so that, and then at the same time, when I say I'm lucky, UGA was University of Georgia was looking for someone to do their digital games. And I knew I needed reps because you don't just step on air and understand. I mean, first time I did a game was at Tennessee, and I didn't even know what I was supposed to do with the headset. Like I didn't know the box, any of it. And so, it just takes reps to go through it and learn. But I was fortunate enough that I was able to do those things. And, I'm one of those things now. It's like my boss calls, I do it. I don't care because it's not the level. And I think anyone who's followed me knows I probably have more pressure when I do a mid-major game or a low Division I than I do doing an SEC or ACC or Pac-12. Sorry, Matthew. Because I know that's that one player that usually that coach is one chance. And I, as a mid-major kid, I understand that. And I want to make sure that I am telling their story the best I can. So I don't really have a straight line path to this job, but I do know that in our field, I think any of you who listen to a game, when a coach is calling a game versus when a player is that analyst on the game.
Dianne?
Well, I mentioned earlier, one of my former players had asked, hey, listen, why don't you do the radio for us? And like Christy, I had no idea, what buttons to push. They gave you a headset, and radio is far different than TV. And at the time, Quinnipiac and the MAC conference had not yet signed with ESPN to digitally carry all their games. So we did it the radio, and we traveled with the team. So it was a matter of, figuring out what button to push. And I was the color. So how to work with a play-by-play person is so difficult. Like you've got to find your rhythm. So you would kind of call people and try to ask them their advice. And I was very, very fortunate. The gentleman who was our calling the games was really a great teacher and a great mentor. And he was very patient. So he kind of taught me the ropes. He would tell me when my piece didn't sound right and what buttons to push, how quickly to get in and get out. And I was a little afraid to bring some of my coaching into it because I wanted to, not give all my ideas. And I remember being on the coaching side with my coach's hat on. I didn't like the media. Said, oh, they're criticizing me. I remember I didn't talk to Kathy Andruzzi for 3 months because I thought she called the game and she liked Patty Coyle better than she liked me when I listened to the game. So I really went over to the other side where I wasn't using my coaching knowledge because I was caring about what the coaches were going to hear or thought what the other people would listen about.
Yeah.
So then I actually, the producer sat me down and said, no, we hired you because of your coaching. Don't worry about it. Just, call it the way you see it. And that's what you need to do. So I did that. And then I got a call from the athletic director and said, listen, we have a new role for you. Would you like it? And I said, I didn't know what he was going to say. And he said, how about joining our TV broadcasting crew? And we want you to do the men and the women. And then we want you to do sideline. So I started to do sideline. And that's a whole different gig where, you don't know what's happening. You got to call what's there. And then you have to, and one of the hardest things I think is asking a coach who's losing, before he goes into the locker room, coach, what are you going to do? And this guy it's the last thing the guy wants to look at you and say like, I have to answer this question. But, and then you learn how to do that. And then from there, I was able enough to get on the broadcast crew. And, you just learn a lot from a lot of different people. And you've like Christy said, you've got to be all hands on deck. If a wire needs to be plugged in, you do it. It's like coaching, whatever makes the broadcast good, you've got to be willing to step up, not be a diva and quickly pick up things and do the best that you can and help your team. It's what I like about it. It's working as a team, just like you did as a coach.
That's awesome. Now, Dianne, staying with you to start off, how much preparation goes into a broadcast? We have no idea really what goes into it.
Matt, that's a great question because I didn't know in the beginning. And now I have to tell you, I prepare for a game as I did as a coach. I watch as much game film as I can on my broadcast. I look, I get synergy. I look at it and I want to know what moves, especially when you're doing a game where you may not be familiar with the team as much as you'd like. So you really want to put your homework into it. I study their plays. You have to study the pronunciations. There's nothing worse than saying the name incorrectly. And some of the names are challenging. So you listen to it. I listen to previous broadcasts where people are announcing the lineups. So I can hear, the correct way to pronounce someone's name. You try to get in touch with either the coach or one of the coaching staff and then you have to earn their trust. Are they really going to tell you, or are they going to think that you're going to give that information to somebody else? Then you have your charts, and then you want to make sure that you have everything accessible very quickly. So you have all kinds of different charts, and depending on your role in the broadcast, you may have more historical information that you're going to share. Or if you're more into, you've got to know, like, is this person going for 1,000 points? Does she like to go to her right, left? What kind of records might be broken? And then a little bit about the history. What's fun about this game? Is this a rival game? Are these coaches, do you know the coaches like each other? Or do you know they don't like each other? So, how you're going to play a little drama to make the broadcasting sound exciting, but yet not sell out the other coach, because you have to always remember that the game, at least the way I look at it, the game is the product, not you. So you've got to make sure that their people aren't listening to listen to you. They're watching the game. So you've got to be careful of that. So how to balance all of that, I think there's a long answer to your short question. There are mounds of preparation. I don't think I know any broadcaster that just picks up the mic and goes in.
Oh, great answer. Christy?
Dan, I'll disagree. My mom watches just for me. And that's the only person out there that watches the game for me. And Matthew, your team is always a very difficult pronunciation time that I spend as much time learning those as I do the X and O's. But similar to what Diane said, it is about similar as a scout, as a coach, except you're doing 2 teams. And beyond that, what are the matchups within the matchup? So when I go about it, it's not just everything that Diane said, but it's also the game within the game. What areas can team X exploit of B and vice versa? And who are the key players? Because those are some of the graphics that we build ahead of time, whether it's keys to the game or in terms of a certain player. This is what makes her good, because I think it goes back to the coach in us. We want to teach the game as we go. It's not just about talking about what we see. And I do think the more I've done this role, it's about every aspect. Is this a blowout? Well, then we've got graphics that are going to be looking ahead to their next games, or, games down the road, or what top players in the league are. Because for me, it's always selling this conference, this team, or a game, and getting people to watch moving ahead. If it's a tight game, understanding and being on top back with that producer, we got to show the coach with this. We got to show the players. And if it's into the game, my job is to know what a coach is probably going to run out of that timeout. Am I always going to get it right? No. But based on what's going on right now, or that's where I just say, if it was me right now, this is what I would do based on who's on the floor. Or there's timeouts there's fouls to give. So it's going to be really difficult for this team to get a shot off. Whatever it is, it's being in the know, but also it goes back to that confidence piece as a head coach. I've prepped enough to where I have an opinion, and that's what we're paid to do as analysts, is have that opinion. But I will tell you, it's similar to being a coach. You do all this prep and you don't know what's going to happen when the ball goes up in the air.
Right, yeah. Well, in that regard, being that it's a lot like coaching, could you each tell us, describe a typical game day? Like, do you have pregame rituals or routines? Do you eat, drink, or certain foods for maximum performance on the broadcast?
One thing that I've learned is just the voice. And so I do a lot of chai tea. I'll do medicine balls if I'm starting to feel down at all, just to keep my voice what it is. Because like this past year was a lot of weeks I was doing 3 games a day, 3 games a week. And so I just wanted to make sure that I was staying on top of it. But you talk about rituals. We forget that we were in a pandemic year before last. And so we were calling games remotely. And so that routine was really weird, because we were getting online 5 hours before tip because of all the technology stuff going along. And so those made very long days, and we never saw a practice in person. And everything was just word of mouth. That was a really difficult prep.
I imagine.
Because we all know as coaches, we know what we want our players to do, but that's not exactly what we're doing come game time. So that was a really difficult year in terms of, I feel like me feeling confident in what I was saying, because I wasn't sure. I wasn't at practices. Mm-hmm. And so a typical game, I like to go in the day before for games, because we all know so much of game day is about the psyche, and we're just wanting everybody to feel confident versus the true X and O's. And so I like to watch that pre-practice where they're really going through the scout, and that helps me on air because I know what the scout's supposed to be. And again, it's the coach's hat. What the players are doing on the floor is not what the coach necessarily wants them to do. And so I always want to be able to speak to the coach is trying to do this right now. But for me, I don't like to be rushed. So after pregame practices that morning, we watch both of them. We'll talk to coaches, occasionally some players, and then we'll go back and grab something to eat real quick. And I like to be at the arena 2 hours before to get settled, make sure everything's working check-wise, go through everything pregame. And just kind of wait for it. But going through all the southern college towns, there is no one type of food. It's really just whatever I can get quickly and get back to the hotel.
Okay. Di, what about you?
Well, one thing I make sure is I have enough sleep, because it's really tedious to stay involved with every play in the game. And the first time I did it, like in the middle of the second half, I'm like, wow, I'm tired. Because you're always looking at everything and you're trying to analyze, and you're staying in the moment, but your head is, you're remembering different things that the coaches have said. And so it's really something that, you've got to work on, that you have to bring energy with the entire broadcast. And as Christy said, sometimes you don't know what's going to happen, on the floor. So you try to get as much information so you're ready for the curveball. You're ready for, like, in the graphics, you've built this one guy up and all of a sudden he has, his worst game. And so, who looks worse, you for building him up or he not having the game. So you've got to make sure that you're thinking. And like, I always have different things that if a curveball comes, I'm ready to interject and really, pick the broadcast up and keep it going. As far as food, I got to make sure my stomach doesn't growl, and that your body feels okay, because you're working close contact, and you got to, again, nothing that is going to throw you. And I get to the arena very early as well, because you kind of get the feeling in pregame, like who comes out on the floor first, and you can see kind of their body language. I try to pick up everything from on game day. I look at, you find out what coach comes out, do they have certain rituals that they do? And so I like to get the feel of the arena very early on.
Awesome. Staying with you, Dianne, what do you enjoy most about broadcasting?
I enjoy being still involved in the game, and B, putting out a product that the players, their families, and the institutions are proud of, and that you're a part of it. And I know it sounds corny, but again, promoting the game. If it's a good broadcast, then people feel that, wow, that was worth my time. And, we are in an entertainment market, but yet we're in a very deeper market than that. It goes beyond that. So, that's what I really want to accomplish. When I leave the arena, I feel like I gave my best, and my best helped that broadcast be good and that product better, and that the players, the institution, their families are proud of. And some days you get it, some days you don't. And when you walk out and you have it, it's like, wow, I made that shot, I made that putt, like I feel pretty good. And then the other days you cringe. I'll be driving home and say, damn, why didn't I bring that up? Or why did I say that? Or why, and you analyze it just the way a coach does.
It's a lot like being in the zone, right?
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is.
And Christy?
So Christy, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's that interaction with coaches. Like, I love sitting down and just talking. And usually my most enjoyable ones are not the X and O conversations. Like, a head coach comes out early for practice, and I'm usually there way early for practices, because that's when I usually get some of my, again, it's the relationship part of it. And, there are things now coaches will share with me that they don't have to tell me that's just not fair. It's more of, and I'm not saying I'm their peer anymore, but it's more that kind of, they're bouncing something off of me or whatnot. And I just love that interaction, because I think for Dianne and I both, we just want to be a part of the game. And we know we're not doing it from a coaching perspective, but how can we impact our game doing what we do? And I love the practices, because I think I can tell you the chemistry, the culture of a team watching a practice.
Mhm.
And I know what's going to happen the next day if I get to watch that day before practice, usually, because it's not just about the X and O's and those athletes. It's about the team, the chemistry, and how they're working through things. I say it a lot of times to teams when I talk to them, come February, are you playing your record or are you playing your potential? Because the grind will eat away at anyone, but also these teams. And so that's what a lot of times you see in February with some of these teams. And so that's why I enjoy the practices so much.
That's so true. That's so true. So, Christy, let's stay with you. What are the biggest challenges of your broadcasting job? Is it difficult calling a game with a new partner? What else do you do to ensure a smooth broadcast, or I guess get in the broadcast zone, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, I went through this year, and by January 1st, I had worked with 15 different play-by-play people. And I take it as a compliment that I'm kind of the free agent that floats around. But it is hard, because it's about chemistry. Like, the best duos are ones that have the chemistry, and it's not just hard X and O's the whole time, or telling you what you see. Like, that's one of my pet peeves. I don't need to read you what a graphic says. If that's a moment I can add something else that coincides with that, I think that's better for the person at home. And I'm not saying I'm right. That's just my pet peeve and how I approach it. And so I think it's also been difficult because ACC and SEC have gone through the school control room model that now I'm with a different producer, except for my Thursday night gig with the SEC. So every game during a week, it's a different producer. So again, you're learning how they want to operate. You're learning that camaraderie because, as Dianne said, when you're on air, you can't be the star quarterback. You got to be that great point guard that's dishing and getting everybody. I'm on talk back talking to the director. Are you seeing this? Can we get this? Same thing to the producer, writing notes to my play-by-play in game. We need to hit this, or, I'm hitting him at times. And that's hard when it's a new person every time. But, the one thing I say to them is I'm just an old coach. They know what makes sexy TV. So that's why the preparation part, I throw everything I have at them from an X and O perspective of what will make our broadcast good. You massage it and make it look good and tell me what to do. And that's the one thing, like, analysts are supposed to drive the broadcast through our preparation, through our notes, telling the producer and everything else. But again, I view it and I tell them all the time, I'm the point guard. I'm not the head coach. We got to work together to do this. And I think the hard part too is if you're remote, everything's about reading people. And when again, I don't think anyone would ever understand what it's like when we did a game remotely, because we'd have a Zoom on one computer, we'd have the game on another, and you're not seeing interactions. And then you had lags in internet times. And so you're stepping on one another and whatnot. And then you couldn't hear officials. Like, that's a big part to me as well. And that's one thing I'll say I've grown as now that I'm in this role. Officials are my friends now.
Yeah. They all want to give the high five before the game, right?
Yes.
And you're like, hey, you're the guy who cheated me up,
But because they're part of our product as well. So I'm that crazy person laying across our table to get them to come over and talk to us, because I don't want to speculate. I want to get it right. So I'm asking them that. And so again, it's just this whole big world of being a team. And I'll be honest with you. I think when you're talking about play-by-play people, a lot of times they weren't the athletes. And when you talk about then getting them on board of it's us, it's our team. It's not about you in this broadcast. It's about what's on the floor. It's another dynamic. And I think we all at this point in our lives know the former athletes that you associate with and those who aren't. And so again, it's helping them be the best version of them to help our team be better that night.
As Christy said, working with different producers is one of I think the biggest challenge, because the first time I did a broadcast and you're talking and then you hear them talking through the headset, and all of a sudden you stop talking. It was the first time it happened. I'm like, whoa, wait, what's going on? And then some know when to come in, some don't. So you've got to kind of roll with those punches. And if you're working with someone new, like Christy said, you've got to, they're looking at you, they're trying to size you up. So you've got to make sure that you show them that you're going to fit in. You just want to add to the broadcast. You're not trying to steal any kind of show. And then you got to know your stuff, because they do rely on you. All of a sudden they'll ask you a question that may not be something that you were thinking about, the play-by-play person. So you've got to be able to really listen to their part of the broadcast, and then you can feed off what they are saying to make it a smooth broadcast. So I think that's a little bit of a challenge. And sometimes when a play-by-play guy is getting it wrong, all right, and it's wrong, and you're sitting there and said, okay, now how can I make this better? Or how can I make this, work? And sometimes, so you're always kind of thinking, again, trying to make this, the best broadcast that it can be.
Awesome. So many great angles that you never really think about. It's just phenomenal answers. It's really, really awesome. Dianne, staying with you, as a former coach, do you find it hard to avoid second guessing other coaches and possibly making enemies in the profession? Or how do you handle that? I know you're paid to give your opinion, but how do you not make enemies at the same time?
Well, what I try to do is you have to be honest, otherwise you lose your credibility. You have to be honest, but I do think there's a way that you can do it that it's not demeaning, that it's not showing that the coach is exercising any kind of weakness. Like, you're sitting there and somebody's got 2 fouls to give and they're not fouling. And so you're thinking like, inside the coach part of you is saying like, Feller, why isn't she not filling them? You know, and the play-by-play guys look at, you know, and sometimes I might have to say that. And so I can't, how are you, you know, get around that? And I think just presenting, calling the game the way it is, you can't get around that. You know, if you're getting blown out, you're getting blown out. You know, but is there a way that, you know, this coach is going to use this as a character? And you'll hear that a lot. But I think if you can think of different ways to make them not look bad, not a player look bad, but yet you've got to tell the story that's there. You know, you can't make it up. Otherwise, you're going to lose your credibility. So I think that the coaches, I think, first of all, they have to trust you. And I think you earned their trust. And once they have that, they understand that, they'll come over after a game and apologize. I've had coaches come up to me and say, damn, we just set women's basketball back, you know, or how, you know, I'm glad I wasn't in your shoes tonight. I wouldn't have wanted to call in that game. You know, you do have coaches that will say that. So, you know, have you, and I think that's the beauty of, and the strength of being in this role after being a coach. You know what that feels like, you know, so you know what, a little bit of what's going on in their head. So again, but the public needs to hear and they see what's going on. So you do have to work on that. And I work on that. You know, I think of different scenarios, you know, the way coaches think of, you know, if someone throws this at me, what am I going to do? You know, I do that in my broadcasting. You know, what questions am I going to ask a coach who's getting blown out and he still has, or she still has to talk to me? So, and you hopefully you don't make enemies, but you know, you got to say what's there.
Right.
Christy?
I do think it's about relationships and it's about that preparation so that you know what they probably were trying to do. But the one thing I've learned to do is put it on myself. If I had been in that moment, I would have had them do this. If it's so egregious that there's only one way. But usually it is a matter of, you know, this is where there's so many timeouts now, right at the end of the game, that's where I'm projecting of, hey, team A has 3 timeouts here. They're going to advance the ball. And then obviously they got one in the pocket. They can't get it in. And then if they score, you know, they're going to, you know, so I'm talking about what, in my opinion, needs to be happening, because usually what, unfortunately for us with so many games back to back is we're going off air. And so unfortunately, there's been so many times I wanted to be able to talk about the end of the game and what just happened and it didn't. And occasionally I get that, but it's more usually for me forecasting as much as it is being critical of what just transpired. And Dianne said it best, like coaches know, I mean, everyone's on TV now. So everyone is used to this. This is old hat for so many teams and so they know what was supposed to happen. But that's where I go back to, I think half of our role is to know what a coach was trying to do. And we all know the plan's not always executed, especially come into the game situations. And so it's what could have happened in that moment.
Thank you. Okay, let's stay with you, Christy. When you think back at your most fond career memories, do more fond memories come from broadcasting or from coaching?
That's hard because right now of what I'm doing, it's easy for me to say broadcast. You know, when I look back at the coaching fond memories, yeah, it's cutting down nets. It's the weddings and so many of those things. As we always tell our players, it's not the scores you'll remember, it's everything off the floor. And so now it's my relationships with them as adults, you know, seeing their kids being born and whatnot. Those are my fond memories as a coach. But I'll also tell you, you know, if you were on early, you heard me, I love college sports. So when I get to sit there and talk to Gino Auriemma and talk basketball, not even about UConn basketball, talk about the growth of our game and where we're going, and to interview him, I'm a kid in a candy store, and I'm sure it comes out that I am in awe. When I got to call, you know, and sorry, Matthew, but when I got to call a Stanford game this year, and it was a long day. We were at Oregon, and it was like a 2-hour gap in between, but Stanford showed up, so we didn't leave. So we were at the gym 6 hours, and my play-by-play guy looked at me because he knew how, he said, we're going to stay for this whole practice because I know you'd kill me if we left. And I said, you're right. Because it was for me watching how one of our best, for both, I mean, when we talk about all these coaches, watching how they do things. It's so impactful to me about, like, sometimes it's rejuvenating for me because we all watch bad basketball, you know, lack of fundamentals, lack of basketball IQ, all these things. And so when you get to talk and watch the legends do what they do, I'm just lucky. I'm just lucky.
Sort of makes you each want to take the mic and say, here, Tara, give me your whistle. Or do you know, right?
So this is a humbling moment. We go to call our game with Tara, and she's one of those that's out early. She's not one of those, she is the first person on the floor for her team. She comes over to me and Eric and says to us, do you have everything you need to call our team today? It's not like Stanford's not on every week, every day, you know, but, and it was the most humbling because you get why she's so great, because it's not about her. And Eric looked at me when she walked away and said, did the Hall of Famer just ask us if we were okay? And I mean, it was a great moment for me, because you just see it's still about people.
Mhm. Di?
Well, I've got both hats on. I just recently, last Thursday, went to a formal wedding of one of my players, but the beautiful thing is her mother played for me, and I was at her mother's wedding. So it was really one of those kinds of things that Patrice Wallace-Moore married a professional basketball player, Lowe's Moore. Their daughter played for me. And so, you know, that was like, oh my gosh, you know, really kind of a special moment. But so that, and, you know, the day we got the automatic bid, you know, you saw a group of young ladies who thought everything had come crumbling down. They lost the championship game by 2 points. It was a great game. We had a great season. And then to see them get an automatic bid, which they thought was impossible being at Fairfield, that was a great moment. But it's funny with the broadcasting that you mentioned that, Christy. I was just recently at a fundraiser. There's a gentleman I'm trying to get into the state senate in Connecticut, and it was Gino Ariema, UConn was doing their coaches little caravan. So I said to this senator who's not too into sports, I said, come on, let's, you know, those kind of moments is because they look at you differently, I think. You know, they really, and they understand how invested you have been in the game, how you care about the game. And I think they've listened to your broadcasts, so they know why, how, the whys of what you do. And so they're grateful that, you know, they have people who care about the game, who care about the people. So I think those kinds of moments are very, very special. Or the time, like you're sitting there broadcasting and the opponent, this guy comes over and you can see he's standing there, he goes, listen, he goes, I'm from Canisius. He goes, we live in, we have family down in New York. We drove all the way down and came to the game. I have to tell you, I always listen to your broadcast. You guys are the best one. And we just had to tell you that. And you sit there and you go like, wow, people do listen, you know?
That's awesome.
That's great.
That's awesome. And Dianne, staying with you, what advice would you give to people seeking to enter just the broadcasting field?
I would say make as many connections as you can and practice your craft just even on a computer or you're watching the TV, and start to pretend and simulate that you are the broadcaster. If you listen to what Beth Mowins did when she was a little kid, you know, she would start to pretend that she was broadcasting. So I would do that. I would sit next to someone who's already broadcasting and shadow them. And so, you know, and then try to make as many connections. Our business is connections. You know, the connection is going to get you in the door, and then your talent's going to keep you there. But it's all about relationships, because a lot of people want to get into it. And how do you do it? You know what you're doing, you make those connections, and then you're ready when you get the call.
Yeah, and you talk about connections. Dianne and I didn't know one another that well. It was always recruiting, you know, hellos here and there. But I came in and did the MAC championship this year, and I had been watching her do the games throughout the season. And she was so gracious that she was sharing with me and answering so many questions. And that helped our broadcast be better for me coming in at the last minute. And it's just those subtle little things that help you. But as I said earlier, the more you give to this game, the more opportunities you're going to have. And I think that's the one great thing about our game is there's so many different aspects of our game now, besides of the product that we see on the floor with just X's and O's. And so there's so many ways to continue to support this game. I'm always going to say, keep coaching, because I think if you want to be an analyst, because you're not going to be Beth Mullins as a coach right now, because that's some formal training. You know, you want to be the analyst side of it. And so you want to get experience as a coach, because that's going to help you in this role. And then from there, I always say, do digital games. Doesn't matter what level, because you need the reps. So if you want to do this, because if you contact anybody, whether it's NBC, CBS, whatever, they want film. They want your tape. And the way to get that is the digital side of it. So again, if this is something you're interested in, and Colleen's got my number, Matthew's got my number, I'm happy to answer any questions, that I can, but it's get the reps, get the practice. Because the one thing I'll say to you is I do digital games when I'm not calling ESPN games. And I still do that now because I just enjoy being at the games and being a part of them.
And always say yes.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. Well, all these, I mean, this has just been I'm the kid in the candy store here listening to you guys. This is unbelievable. And now we'd like to open it up to some Q&A for all the coaches that came on, just to kind of throw you guys some curveballs and hear some impromptu stuff. So coaches, go ahead and unmute yourself and or raise your hand.
I have a question. This is Ebony. I'm from K-State. First, Coach Mott, awesome job on your snacks and the Freedom song. And This Girl's on Fire. It was a little remix, so that was awesome. And I had a question for Dianne. I know you spoke about your mentors, but who do you think, who's the most, in your opinion, someone in the broadcasting business that you really think is phenomenal at what they do right now? Guys, a guy or a lady?
I always listen to UB Brown. I'm a little old school, but what I love about UB's broadcasting, it's always about the game, and it's not about him, and he makes it entertaining. So to me, I love when any game that he's announcing, he's broadcasting, I'm listening, because I just think he's a cut above most broadcasters.
What
How
about
you, Christy? Yeah.
For me, I honestly, now that I've done this a while, I'm looking at different people for different things that I don't have. Like Rebecca's phenomenal. We all know that. But Rebecca has so many more resources because she's that, but like how she'll say things, how she'll lay out. Those are all things that I'm still learning. I think Carolyn Peck is hilarious. And I wish I had half the charisma and charm as Carolyn does. And so again, for different people, I know my bias is to listen to former coaches, though, because they look at things and talk the way I would. And so I enjoy those games more, male or female games. But for me, I watch all games because there's just everybody brings something different to their games that I know I can grow from.
I probably watch more games now than I did as a coach.
Well, I thought it was interesting that you each said that you probably watch more game tape because now you have to watch two teams, that you're broadcasting and know things about both teams. So, that is just double the work, double the time you put into it. And so
thank goodness for synergy.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for synergy.
Gosh, yeah. I don't know how we survive without it.
But think of it this way, you guys are both undefeated too, so yeah.
Well, that's what I always say.
That's probably the biggest plus. When you walk out the arena, no matter what happened, you sleep at night.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'll ask a question I don't want to dominate all the questions here, but you guys, I have to imagine that you both have like the most the rule book and the emphasis and all, you have to have that like on speed dial, and you have to be because you have to be the expert, like all the nuances, the lower defensive box, like all those things that even coaches sitting on the bench don't know the nuances of the rules. How do you guys, as a broadcaster, have you had to take that up a notch, your knowledge of the rules, or have you always been kind of an expert on those small nuances?
I had to relearn it and
Yep.
be ready to understand it. And
Yep.
before the broadcast season, I call our rules director and I say, okay, explain to me why this came in. Explain to me, because sometimes the play-by-play guy, I mean, you're supposed to be the expert. They will always look to you. So you do have to be able to explain it very succinctly.
Yep.
And you've got to make sure that you have it right, because people are counting on that.
Yep.
But, oh yeah, I sit down with our rules person.
Mhm.
So we will usually have a call at the beginning of the year with the head of officiating for the NCAA. And they'll send things out. Well, our play-by-plays usually have the rules because they're the first ones to speak when that happens. And I was on the Mizzou versus South Carolina game at Mizzou this year.
Wow.
The upset game. And my play-by-play person, because an official had told him, oh no, he had it in his rule sheet, the most recent one he had, that that you had to have more than 0.3 on the clock to catch and score, not to tip or anything. That was the most recent sheet that had been sent to us. And then we have it all printed out. But again, guys, things are happening quick. And I knew it didn't sound right, but I wasn't sure. So I didn't correct him. And we go off the air and because we're remote. This is why it gets so hard. If we're there, we're bringing the officials over. And even in that moment, an official told the coach there, because we called coaches afterwards wanting to talk about it. And the official even had it wrong in that moment. Again, everybody's human and it happens quick. But what I have started doing, I have the SEC coordinator officials, the ACC, and I am texting them in game anytime before we go to break or anything. So that, because again, we just want, and that's what they know, at least one, they know I'm stupid, but two, they know I want to get it right. And so that's why I say it's always kind of been my philosophy. If I don't know, I'm going to ask, because and that's where I got off the air that night. And I was so mad because we didn't get it right. And I always look at that. I just heard a game and the game is fragile to me. And I never wanted to do something like that. That hurts our game. So yes, to know it all, but the book keeps expanding, and there's different nuances. And I'll text official friends now, and because again, I'm going to get someone in that moment. If they're not on a game, they're going to have their phone by them, and I can get an answer usually, before we come out of TV timeout.
Wow.
And if you do get it wrong, you get a text during the game. I've got texts from coaches, you're promoting a game and you say something wrong. I get, you look down and Dad, we are located here, or this is, and you're like, okay.
Wow. Other coaches?
Matthew and Colleen, you have my credentials, my number and things like that. Give them, feel free to give them to everybody.
Well, we're right at our hour and 20 right now, but I've got to say, I thank you both so much for coming on and doing this. This has just been just blows me away that first of all, that both of you would take the time to do this, and give back to the game and give back to this group of coaches. And then just what you guys shared was just so precious and valuable and powerful. Thank you so much.
Well, I apologize for having to go in and out in the beginning there, so sorry.
The fire drill was hilarious.
Well, for me, just to be associated with Dianne is a privilege. So I appreciate everyone's time.
Same here. I mean, we're all in this, and the two of you, Colleen and Matthew, I mean, what you have started and the time that you put into it and the connections that people have made through this. I mean, I can't tell you how grateful we are for what you two do and how many connections that you forged by doing this.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that and we enjoy it. And like you said, it's all about connections, all about networking. And, people have found jobs on the Zoom, right? So.
Yeah, and I'll be very honest. Colleen and I, we've thrown out so many asks, and we never get no's. People just constantly want to give back to the game and help other coaches, and it's just great to be a part of and to know that people are willing to give back and help other people learn. That's basically all it is we're just trying to get better. Everybody's just trying to get better. So thank both of you. I appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recording now, and thank you. And Colleen, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thanks
Yeah.
for your time. And
Thank
anybody
you.
who wants to stay on, we
Yep.
always chat. You both are welcome to stay on. We just sort of catch up with whoever's on there.